Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome. Welcome to Pure Presence Book Club Live and the study of the nature of consciousness. This week, we're on Chapter 6, Self-Enquiry and Self Remembering. And we have Andrea Frase as a guest today. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Bill. Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. I feel welcome.
Yes, yeah.
I feel welcomed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll give everyone a minute to come into the room. It catches up pretty quickly. I have a glitch on my computer. For some reason, the computer that operates the phone feature of this call, that computer is not working, and I have my iPad open, and I don't see one caller that has called in. So I actually am not certain that that feature is working. Looks like I'm the only one that's called in so far. So we have about 25 people here that are with us on the live video, and thank you all for joining with us on week 6, chapter 6, the self-inquiry and the self-remembering chapter. And I don't know if you guys are like me, it's like you're drinking in this the way Rupert is describing the contents of awareness and the contents of consciousness. he's such a he's such a master articulate presenter of this information and this understanding. He does it in such a precise and concise way, and I just love him. I can't wait to get on some more of his webinars. You know, he does those weekly webinars. I haven't been on one since October, but I'm pretty sure I saw that he has at least 4 available in the month of November. If you guys have a chance to go to his website and sign up for his webinars, they're inexpensive. It's a donation basis of like $25, and you watch him masterfully uh, express the contents of the pointing of the direct path experience, and then he'll bring beings in that are, they're in a little stuck spot, and he just brings them into the illumination of the knowing experience, which just totally heals the mind that thinks that it's separate for a moment. It just brings it into its own recognition, and therein lies the light and the truth and the full experience that is available to all living beings, to all creatures of uh, that are aware and open to the experience of their own consciousness. And Andrea, I'm just very happy to have you as a part of the as the guest list and this week's chapter 6. And I'm grateful that you're in the book club. I've
Oh, yeah, me too.
You and I have been friends for a long time, and we've always had this, like, even when it was a Course in Miracles event, or whether it was a tent event, or one of your drumming experiences, it was always, you and I always seemed to have this knowing about each other, that we had an understanding that was a little bit off of the path or the consensus of the group that we were in, but at the same time we were able to make a connection, and it's always been that way. And I've just really appreciated your influence and your involvement in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I'm like touched. And I'm getting a little echo.
Yeah, well,
And
I
maybe
can hear the echo, so I think we have someone that called in. So Let me.
Yay! Hello, hello.
Vernon Rowe, welcome to the Pure Presence Book Club. I'm going to unmute your mic for just a minute, just to ask you if you can hear us and to see if we can hear you. Are you there, Vernon?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good, good.
I can hear you just fine.
Oh, good. Okay, so now that I know that that feature is working on my iPad, I appreciate you letting me know that's working and we're good to go. And if you have any questions, please just raise your hand or press *2. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you. And welcome to the show. And Andrea, this is, as I opened up last week, these 4 chapters are like the stimuli and they're like the whole contents, the rich deliciousness of this book, The Nature of Consciousness. And last week we talked about the direct path to enlightenment. And it's funny because I'm a Course in Miracles student and teacher, and I used to think, well, the Course in Miracles is a direct path. And it kind of is, and it kind of isn't. It's an indirect direct path, but you have to be willing. You have to be willing to.
That's pretty clear, Bill.
Yeah, it's an indirect direct path in non-duality, but it's really the portal and the entry of A Course in Miracles comes through duality. It comes through a dualistic framework to help you to notice that you're not what you thought you were, so that you can be and experience what you are. And in that way, I think it's an indirect path, whereas the direct path, which is what drew me to Muji, and it's what drew me to Rupert Spira, is the idea that this awareness that has always been present, that has never not been present. As soon as I became aware of this awareness, I became conscious of the direct path. I became conscious that, oh, okay, now if I will contemplate this, which is aware of everything that is experienced, now I'm experiencing the direct path of consciousness. Is that the way you see it? How would you describe that?
Let's see. How would I describe that? Well, one of the things that, and I'm getting a little echo in my thing here, comes and goes. So anyway, just letting you know that.
Okay. So
my experience of how you described you and I as sort of being in a circle and sort of being on the outside of the circle at the same time, and that we always had this connection. Mm-hmm. So there's an awareness there. And I see that awareness is so clear that we even wore the same colors today. It's like our awareness called each other up and said, "Hey, what color are you wearing today, Bill?" That's the first thing I noticed. Is I was noticing my awareness brought, because I'm a big color person. So anyway, my experience, and I met you through Course of Miracles. And yes, we've had a lot of interactions, and there is a knowing, and I always knew. I didn't know. The cognitive finite mind did not know how it was going to come together. But I knew when I started hearing you using words from Rupert's books and that whole idea, I was like, because that's what really sort of solidified everything for me, was the way that Rupert, the language that Rupert uses. I read the Course in Miracles a number of times. I did the workbook. I was in groups. And the language of it is what, once I started, studying with groups and the language of it, changed the experience. Because when I first got it, I just heard from my awareness, go get this book. It'd been given to me 18 years before I ever read it. And one day it just said, go read it. So I did. And the mind looked at it and says, well, how many chapters are there? You know, right away it wanted to, you know, get involved, and said 31. I went, oh, well, I'll read a chapter a day. So that's what I did. And I read Course in Miracles in 31 days. And the language didn't get in my way at that time. What happened to me was that I had this literally out of body experience of reading it. And I went, oh my God, someone finally told the truth. And because that's been my only desire through my whole spiritual path is, what is the truth? The world doesn't make any sense to me. What is the truth? So if I ask the open question of what is the truth, awareness will bring that to me. And the world wasn't bringing it to me, so something had to bring it to me. And when Rupert started, because when I got into the groups and we really started like taking apart the book and, you know, reading each line and looking at the words, what happened is, you know, I kind of got lost in, you know, him and her and son. And it started to become too physical for me because my experience of reading it was complete awareness and truth. And when I read Rupert, I don't have gender. I have consciousness, awareness, and knowing. And that's how I knew myself. But it was like, how do I articulate it? Trying to do it through words of other characters kept it in a worldly way for me. And it didn't feel like a worldly read to me. It felt like there was a greater message there, but it was getting lost in all of this, almost like, I would describe it for me as almost like religious words. And that wasn't such a great experience for me. So and I've been asking for clarity, and I was getting it through my own awareness. And then when I discovered Rupert in the way that he engages awareness, my awareness with his awareness, which is the same awareness. So I just felt this wonderful connection, and the language of it freed me from all of the connections to gender and body and world. And it was like, oh, there I am. Oh, I finally can talk about myself. And it was like, so when I got this book, I was like, oh, this is like my autobiography. The nature of consciousness, which is the nature of all of us, which is my nature. And I love in chapter 6, this, I thought like maybe one of the best places to start would be to just read this one line here, because it is about.
Hold up on that just a minute.
Yeah.
I just want to ask Verdon if she is able to hear your voice. Are you hearing Andrea, Verdon?
No, I am not.
You're not hearing her. Okay, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that because I'm not seeing that feature light up on the call-in, and so it looks to me like I wonder. I'm going to try plugging in the into my phone with the mic. Let's just see what happens when I do that. Hold on just a second. And I just wanted, I'd like, because I was just noticing, I'll bet you Verdon, is it Verdon? Is that how you say it?
No,
Vivian. Okay. So Vivian, can you hear me still? Can you still hear me, Vivian? I don't hear you. Are you there? Vivian?
Yep.
Okay. Andrea hears you. Andrea, would you speak so Vivian can hear you?
Hi, Vivian.
Can you hear Andrea?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
So the callers can't hear you talk. Can you can you use the link that lets you view it, or are you?
No, my internet is very spotty. I tried that and I couldn't do it, but it's okay. Don't take time.
Okay.
I'll just listen to you and I will meditate in between.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy to know that. I'm sorry to know it, but it's what's happening. The laptop is not working, so this is what we have. So thank you, Vivian, and go ahead, Andrea. You were talking about chapter 6, and
well, that's why replay is so fabulous, Bill.
yes,
She'll be able to.
Yes,
at some point she'll be able to look at.
That's available in the link is also fabulous. You're right, and flawlessly over and over as many times you want to use it.
Yes.
And
so
it looks like just real quick. David said that the volume is very low for Bill. Is it better now, David? Are we good on the volume now? Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Is the chat open, Bill?
Yeah, the chat is open. If you hit that little box under the sprocket, the gear, you'll see it says chat, and then you click on that, and you'll see that that everyone is hearing you just fine. And
it's to the left of enable chat.
Yeah. Good morning from Colorado. Hello, great to be here. Oh, Vivian, you're here. You're here on the online, so I see you. I see you on the chat. Henrik, welcome. David, volume is low. Arthur, tomorrow, 11:30 Eastern. I'm not sure what that means. Hi from South Florida. I'll be in Florida tomorrow, Jacqueline. And Anne, so glad to have you back. I want to see if Anne, I'll send you an email. I'd love to have you back on the show in video form if we can for the last show on the 29th. That would be awesome. And then next week, I'll just remind everyone, next week we're going to have Jenny Beal on the show, and I'm looking forward to that also. Yeah. Okay, you can hear me now. Webinar 11:30. Oh, I see. Anne is saying that the webinar is tomorrow at 11:30 for Rupert. If you guys can go to that, be sure and go to it. Man, I would be going to it if I wasn't going to be on a flight to Florida. I'm going to go meet my grandson for the first time. He's 2 weeks old.
Yay!
Yeah.
What's his name?
His name is Carson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought you were going to say I am.
His name is I am. He is that quick.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
So you were pointing us to chapter 6.
Well, I'm going to direct the mind to chapter 6, which is what we're working on today, and that is the self-enquiry. And the first thing I noticed was enquiry, not inquiry, with the E-N, yes, which means to ask questions, which is different than inquiry, which is investigation. So first you have to ask good questions and new questions of the mind in order to have a different kind of investigation, as opposed to like this, the investigation of the objective experience of the world. That's where usually where the mind is directed, is toward that. So Rupert's inviting us to direct ourselves in a different way and ask new questions. And so I find this book really, really helpful, and this chapter is a wonderful experience. So I thought one of the best places, what was brought to my awareness was that one of the best places to start was on page 56, and it's at the bottom, next to the last paragraph. It says, until the nature of ourself is known, it is not possible to have correct knowledge about any other thing. Thus, there is no higher knowledge than to know the nature of oneself, the nature of I. And so this chapter is about inviting us into experiencing that direct connection to the I. Was the universal word for all of us. Every single being on the planet calls himself I in whatever language they speak. It's always I. And the I, in the I am, is, as it's described in this chapter, is the portal that consciousness uses to bring forth this manifestation of a finite mind located in a body to have the experience of the world, and also each of us in the innumerable finite minds that make up all of us in this world. So the awareness is through which all of this is known. And that awareness calls itself I.
Yes.
And so so of course, so who's the I? If we really know the truth of who we are, who's the knower, who's the awareness that is aware of all experience, and all experience is made up of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. So so each of those things is some sort of a form of finite mind experiencing itself. And so this awareness is, to know it would be to get the mind to, as the term in this chapter says, turn the mind around. And as Rupert said, that's like asking the sun to turn around and illuminate on itself. It's not possible, but it is possible to have the mind ask a question of itself, sort of invite it in the worldly way. We think of ourselves as an in and an out. And it's a great place to start. So you can just start with that feeling of awareness, like that feeling of this is present, something's observing us, something's listening, something is aware. There's an awareness that's aware of Andrea, awareness of Bill, awareness of this connection, awareness of voice, sound, and all of that appears. We've all been trained to make the assumption that those things are happening outside of the mind, and actually they're happening inside of the mind. So to investigate who we really are, and to have that there's no higher knowledge than to know the nature of oneself, this chapter is about how do you do that? How do you bring yourself to yourself?
Yeah. Because
we're taught to overlook ourselves. And consciousness did that very willingly to, bring forth manifestation to just for the sake of knowing something other than itself, because it always knows itself by itself. It doesn't need this finite mind to know itself. It doesn't need me to tell it what it is. And so there's this beautiful way to just kind of get a little more quiet when something comes up, and just relax back into and say, and ask yourself, am I aware? It's like the first place to start. And what am I feeling? What am I noticing about a feeling or a thought? Where does it take me? And to realize that there's something that's aware of thought, something that's aware of feeling, something that's aware of sensations and a perception. What is aware of those things? Because that helps coming into the awareness of noticing thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions is a hint that I'm not that. I'm not that thought. I'm not that feeling. I'm not that perception. I'm not those sensations. It feels like I am. The experience feels very real. But there's an experience that's even deeper than that, and that is the awareness through which that experience is known. All of it is known through the awareness that I am, that you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
well, this is where the stillness comes into play, or the quiet contemplation comes into play. This is why we need to, like as Rupert pointed out in this chapter, where Jesus said or was quoted in the book of Matthew, saying to go into a closet, into that quiet place, and in that quiet place, you're saying you're moving away from the distractions of the world of perception, so that you can have this self investigation, or this self contemplation and noticing. And it's from that contemplation and noticing that the sun does know itself, or the awareness notices itself, not as an object, but as a knowing experience. Like you said, you have a feeling, but it's not something that you feel with the body's senses. It's a feeling,
Right.
knowing.
Right. It's what we call the sixth sense, or there's some perception past what would be an objective observation.
Yeah, it's a knowing experience, and
Exactly.
that happens when we come into this. Often, when we go into the place of abiding, and then when we go into leading a guided meditation, or joining a guided meditation, and we move into the experience of being, of this pure awareness, this pure presence of experience, we actually have the visceral experience of being, and and aware of it at the same time. It's like takes your breath away, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in that place, you don't need breath. There's no breathing necessary in that place. So I love, this is so great. So there is this, it says that our essential, because our primary experience, as Rupert points out consistently throughout this book, is awareness. Every single being is aware. We may overlook that we're aware and see it as, because we believe, we've been brought up in this panpsychoism that, that matter has consciousness. But this form, Andrea, doesn't have consciousness, because this is matter. And in truth, matter doesn't matter. When you come right down to it, what matters is the awareness that is aware of the experience of it. Because consciousness, because consciousness is always aware of itself by itself. And if it wanted to have an experience other than itself, then it would need to bring forth and manifest this finite mind, something limited, because it's unlimited. So if it wants a different experience, it would bring that forth and manifest that, and then localize it in a body, in a finite mind, and that would give it a completely different experience, which is what we are experiencing, and it's experiencing itself, experiencing that. So it's all for the same consciousness. There's no separateness of that consciousness from me or from you. We share the same consciousness, we share the same awareness, we share the same knowing, which is why we're all having this conversation. Some of us can hear it, some of us can see it, some of us can't hear it, some of us can't see it. But in the end, it's all going to come together. And we're all at different points of going deeper into the mind. And so if you want to know about the mind, you have to investigate the mind, which is what this chapter is inviting us to do. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking that.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose sound?
No.
What? What'd you say? Uh-oh.
You said you were thinking. I said, okay, what's the finite mind got to say now?
Well, when I was in the hot tub this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just contemplating the experience of awareness, and then I was, as awareness, I was thinking, awareness is experiencing itself as me in the hot tub.
Yeah.
And this can't be a mistake. This isn't a mistake. This is a way that infinite experience, infinite eternalness, is having an experience as a finite experience, as
Mm-hmm.
a person, as time and space, and yet now it's awakening to the vastness of of what happened. Because before we wake up to this understanding, and before we wake up to awareness and consciousness and the knowing of it, and the knowing of the experience that is being experienced by the infiniteness of what we are, before we know all of these things, we think we're this little finite body, and that it's very small and limited and very and the lifespan is very short. And then when we have this experience of awakening and we have an understanding of what is occurring, I was sitting in the hot tub this morning just going, oh wow, this is so cool. Infinite love did all of this on purpose so it could have an experience as me, as you, as everyone on the board, as the 8 billion of us, and all the zillions of other insects and animals and grains of sand and gazillions of grains of sand, and all
matter.
All matter is being experienced by infinite intelligence. Yes.
Infinite. If it wants to have a hot tub, Bill, it needs you.
Yeah.
It needs to contract itself into a finite mind, localize it in a body, and then put that body in a hot tub in the world that it created not to know itself, but to have another experience.
Yeah.
And for me, a lot of this is just allowing me to really enjoy life more and to not be so concerned about everything I say, everything I do, because this beautiful love that I am is not sitting in judgment of me. It's just aware of me. It's not judging me. It's not criticizing me. That's something that happens in my finite mind. Yeah. This love is just always loving me. And that freed me from worrying. I mean, as a child growing up in, a Christian home, boy, I was terrified of what I would call God. And this, if I wasn't perfect, boy, I was going to eternal hell. And it was just absolutely, completely terrifying. Mm-hmm. So that's why when you get into the Christian language, that had a scar on me. And I didn't want to think or relate to that because I didn't want to relate to something that wasn't all love. Because something about everything I always felt love for everything. And then I was like, well, you can't love that. Or why do you like that? Why do you say that? It was constantly this questioning. And I was just curious. I mean, awareness is curious. Yeah. Consciousness is curious. It's creative. It's loving. It's peace. It's beauty. It's art. It's everything. Mm-hmm. And it's the hot tub. It's this webinar, it's the headset, it's the jewelry, it's lipstick, it's a beard on your face. It's just experiencing all of it. And so we can have so much more fun in life. And I was so serious about everything in life before because I was always being so careful that I didn't disrupt or disappoint this love. So because I wanted to go to that place that they told me that I could get to when I died. And what's so beautiful, and some people might not think that this is beautiful, but I had a younger brother pass about 20 years ago when I had started doing my self-investigation. And he was so worried and so fearful of his passing because he was a little bit of a hellion and he didn't think he was a good enough person for God to love. And he was terrified he was going to go to hell. And I was so concerned for him because I just knew he was so fabulous and lovely. And so I talked to him about it. I said, don't worry about it, Gordon. There's no way God doesn't love you and accept you. And I wouldn't worry about anything. And after he passed, and he had such terror about passing, he got so tight in his body that he actually broke his teeth trying to stay in the body because that belief was so real to him. And the body was so real to him, and his idea of good and bad and acceptance and not acceptance, love, not being loved, all these contrasts of duality were so huge in him. And I just kept seeing love. And so after he passed, about 4 days after he passed, his best friend was packing to go back to California. And I happened to be with my brother when he passed. And before that, I'd always had this great fear of death because I believed in it. because the world says we come in, everything in the world is temporary, and Rupert emphasizes that all the time. And and so here's this being that I just so love, and he's gonna pass. And I said, I don't know your plans, but I would love to be with you when that happens, if that's okay with you. And he did want me there, and I was there. And then after he passed, I remember leaving the house because I wanted to be with him. So I went to the beach. He always loved the ocean. And before I left, my mother looked at me and she said, well, aren't you going to stay with him? And I remember looking at the body and going, why? He's not here. That knowing, that awareness that I'm not the body, he's not the body. In that moment, without really paying that much attention to it, I remembered these things because it was my awareness bringing itself into itself's awareness again in that moment. No, he's not the body. And guess what? Neither are you. But I didn't see myself that way because I was still moving around. But it was very clear to me when he passed. Mm-hmm. So afterwards, 4 days later, we had this, we had a service, and his best friend was packing to go back to California, who had flown in to be with him as well. And I looked up from his friend as he was talking to me, and behind his friend was my brother standing there like, I'm looking at you, Bill. It's like, so you're looking at me.
It was a transparent image?
Absolutely. Like you could reach out and touch it. He had a shirt on that I knew. He looked fabulous, and he passed from cancer. And he was emaciated and all, just really difficult to witness. Yeah. So when you love someone.
That's just really imagery still though, right?
Mm-hmm. That's still it's all in my mind. Right. My mind is my awareness is bringing something into my mind, and it's showing me, because I was so sure that God was going to love him and accept him. And here he is, healthy, vibrant, dressed well. In other words, it was a way to bring him into my awareness. I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And he looked straight into my eyes, and I felt like I got this huge download in that moment. And all these years later, what it simply was saying to me is, you don't have to die to be with God. Mm-hmm. And if that's not what this is saying, this whole book, everything about the direct path to awareness, to consciousness, to ourselves, is that there is no death. We don't have to die to be with God. We are that. And I am is that, like that hint and that trace and that light, that memory that never really goes away, because consciousness is willing to overlook itself. It's also very willing to remember itself, because the other thing in this chapter is not just, self-inquiry, it's self-remembrance. Well, you can't remember something unless you already knew it. Yeah. So in itself, it's saying.
The teaching of Rupert is to bring us into the nature of mm-hmm. our true consciousness, is bring us into the nature of being. Even though, and one of the things that I love about Rupert, and I think it shows up in the chapter 9, the outward facing path, collapsing the distinction between consciousness and objects. And that's where the things that are occurring, like our relationships with people, with ourselves, with mm-hmm. objects, with the objective experience, that's where the infinite consciousness joins back to the experience of the world experience, just like we were just talking about.
Yeah. It's like that. The I am is, as Rupert was saying in here, is the portal for this experience of objective experience, and the I am is also the portal back to source.
Yes.
So
I like what David Spector just wrote on the chat board. He said, we can identify with the body that is dying, or the one that passed, with awareness, or is dying, or with the awareness that is continuing, which is more fun. And in being compassionate to our relationships with family, with beings that pass, and the love that is that connection. That it's really cool to see that the consciousness is compassionate, and in the compassion of consciousness, symbolically, a lot of times we'll have images that will be a projection of our own experience that is going, oh yeah, and someone may even tell us in our thoughts, I'm fine, I'm awesome, I love this place, you can't wait for you to join me. And we can have that experience, but the key, and I think this is what David Spector is speaking to, is that to know the truth about your brother, for me to know the truth about my family members that have passed, or the animals, or whatever, or my wife, or my children, or whatever, is to know that nothing really happened, except that they came in, they had a human experience. It seemed like it was a family member or a brother, but it was really consciousness happening over there as him or her, it. And I got to be part of that connection. That was cool. That was a cool experience. And not really, there's no grief in that either. There's just joy. There's just, wow, that was cool. Right?
Yeah. And I don't have a deep sadness around this passing, because and I had a husband pass away 3 years ago, and I was with him as well. I actually am with a lot of people when they pass. And to me, it's a, in the world we talk about birth and death, but it's sort of a rebirthing, or coming back. They're going, coming back to source. Not that we ever leave source, because source, there is no distance between consciousness and itself. And there's no distance between consciousness and me. There's no distance between me and consciousness. It's all the same thing. The birth, the seeming deaths, the visions, all these things is consciousness having an experience other than itself as this infinite dimensionless formlessness. It can also be form. It can, and it appears, and it appears as a temporary, exists as something, a temporary form. And for the experience, it's not to suffer. It's not for anything. It's like when I dream at night. I've brought this up with people before. I'm not worried about all those characters in the dreams when I appear to wake up and come into life, into my daydream, my night dream and my daydream. I'm not worried about all those characters. If I see life as the same dream, my waking dream, it's like I came up and did this trust and this will, and the whole time I was doing it, I thought it was going to be like this very difficult experience. Where's all my stuff going to? And I was like, and then when I was doing it, I started laughing through the whole thing. I go, this is so crazy, because there's no one to leave it to. This is my dream. And when I stop dreaming the dream, there's nobody to give it to. But the world, so it was just an exercise in worldliness. But it was also an exercise in awareness that I'm not this world. I'm not this body. And this stuff is not real. And so, I don't have to take everything, including myself, so seriously and be so concerned that I'm going to make a mistake, say something wrong or whatever, and something horrible is going to happen to me. Nothing's going to happen to me. I remain this pure, perfect
awareness,
eternal awareness,
and it
forever.
Never dies. It was never born. It always is. And
it doesn't get old.
The self. That's what this chapter is about. And I want to try to get back to the content of the chapter. The self-inquiry and self-remembering is using all of these facets, all of these experiences in our lives, the hot tub, your brother, your dreams, my dreams, all experiences bring us to the experience of self-remembering. using all of these forms, all of these experiences in time to and we need to pause to do this, because if you're totally chasing after, what does this mean? What does that dream mean? What happens when my brother passed? What about my kids? And if you're chasing after the experience and not taking the pause to contemplate the self-inquiry of awareness and contemplate the experience from a place of noticing, of the being, of just being, then you're missing the real and true experience, in my mind.
Yeah, I think that there's a on the last, let me just see, the page number 65. It's the last page in the chapter, and it's let's see, the paragraph that starts with "only from King Lear." Well, this King Lear metaphor was really interesting as well.
Yes.
But near the end of the paragraph, it says, I highlighted, self-remembering or self-inquiry, a sinking or relaxing of our attention through deeper layers. And I'm personalizing, so I'm saying, instead of him, I'm saying ourself, until we can go no further. That is, until we have arrived at our own unqualified, inherently peaceful being. That's what the inquiry asks us to do. And in the next paragraph, it said, King Lear's mind was a limitation of his own mind. And so my mind is a limitation of my own true consciousness.
Yes.
So, and it's saying, could it be that my own mind is a self-assumed limitation of a greater, unlimited mind, which is, at the same time, who I essentially am? And to me, that's in it in a nutshell. It's like until we come into being the direct path of being aware that we are the awareness that is aware, there's some mixing up of worldliness and awareness, and as Rupert might describe it, as coloring. It gets mixed with the true awareness. So I thought that particular passage sort of spoke to what we're talking about, but all these things that happen, whether you were in the hot tub and you were very relaxed and you're sinking deeper and deeper into the mind, and when you were sinking deeper and deeper into the mind and letting go, there you were, consciousness, having a hot tub. You know what I mean? Pure consciousness, having the experience of a form in the world.
Yeah. Reducing itself and modulating, Rupert would say,
modulating,
contracting itself in the experience of a finite mind that manifested itself as a form in a body called Bill Free.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Exactly.
And what I love about this, I love how Rupert sort of, he unpacks it in such a way that that it makes it easy to understand. Like even the I am, the very first page of this chapter, he talks about the I am, and somewhere in here he talks about Moses' reference to that, and it blows my mind really to think that this whole thing called an Old Testament, which is the Torah, which came from this guy Moses, who I am that I am sent him. He didn't realize that it was his own God self that was sending him forth to do these great things. He always was projecting and objectifying God as being an entity outside of himself.
Well, that's what we're taught.
Yes.
And we swallow it hook, line, and sinker, boy. I know I did. But it's like, I'm this body, I'm this gender, I have a name, I have a place where I live, and I bought into it. And as I know that blind acceptance will keep you blind. to the
Well,
truth.
and it's very refreshing to see when I see Rupert refer to an Old Testament scripture that's actually relevant to me. It's relevant to you. When he uses the scripture in Isaiah, thou wilt keep him perfect in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Now, used to be, I would take a verse like that and think, oh, if I keep my mind on God, and that was a God outside of me,
Yes.
I will have the experience of perfect peace. But the truth is, if I will just remember that I am what God is, I am that I am, is this beautiful covering of understanding. And when I keep my awareness on what, just keep the awareness present, be practicing until I don't practice any longer. I just know and I am the I am. And when that experience is now fully, it's really taken the place of the conditioned belief, the conditioned self, person identity belief, when the true self identity has taken the place of the false self identity, then I experience all of what life has to offer from a place of knowing what I am. All of these things occur. This experience we're having right now is being watched by awareness. It's being experienced. It's being seen that the experience is taking place, but yet this subtle background of awareness is still in the background, knowing this and aware of this, and yet untouched by any of this.
And willing to overlook it on some level.
Yes.
For the experience, it has to overlook itself in order to experience the world and Bill and Andrea. But it's also, you can move deeper and deeper into sinking deeper and deeper into the mind until the limitations of the idea of myself and everything that I was told start to get divested or fall away or just sort of melt away. And you're left with just the essence and the pure awareness that's aware of everything.
Yes.
And to really feel that. And if only consciousness is conscious, then only consciousness is conscious. It's not, I'm not conscious. Only consciousness is conscious. And consciousness can have a consciousness of Andrea. And Andrea can have a consciousness because there's no separation.
Yes.
So you can have the experience, you can be yourself in the experience, you can be pure awareness in the experience. I don't have to give up the world, to give up the experience of Andrea to be fully aware and be in this world. And I feel that a lot of people get a little bit afraid of they're giving up their world, they're giving up their ideas of themselves and God. And sometimes it can be a little, to the finite mind who sees a lot of limitations, can be very frightening. But I want to just really open the door to how welcoming love's awareness is, and how it's been holding that space for us to come into forever.
Yeah.
And as this idea of ourselves is unfolding.
Yeah. Well, I want to pause right there and pick up some of the comments on the chat board. Thank you guys for making the comments. Hello, William Rainery, and Anne said, and this might sound abstract when we know the body is already open, unlimited being, then what dies? Good question. The abstract turns out to be the real, true. Maybe even death is life itself. I totally agree with that. Look at the tree. I mean, we don't know. We're still looking at form, but you watch the cycle of the seasons, things come and go, come and go, come and go. It's just the ebb and flow of life itself. And David says the full experience of awareness is better than any hot tub or other finite sensory experience. Totally true. It's like the
Part of it.
it's like the monk that said, you know, what's it like not to have an orgasm? And the monk says, man, I have an orgasm all the time. What are you talking about? Not missing anything.
Mhm.
And then David said that, yes, another way to say that it is that the fullness of life is in the emptiness of being aware. Totally, totally true. And the full experience of awareness is better than, okay, any hot tub experience. And then Anne says, to be more precise, awareness does not have the experience. That's true. Thank you, Anne. It arises as an experience and knows it. Once looked into, it only knows or sees itself. Yes. Yes, that's the beauty of this content. It's the beauty of the nature of consciousness. And Anne says, I meant death is life itself, even death is the infinite. Totally true. Yeah, I got that when you said that. And then D. Lynn said, is there a difference between absolute awareness and relative awareness? Not that there are two awarenesses. This is a question I watched an 8-year-old ask Rupert in person. Are there two awarenesses? An 8-year-old boy was in the front row in a retreat in California, and he asked Rupert this question right here. Are there two awarenesses? And Rupert said, no, there's only one awareness. And what we have heard Rupert say, and I've seen him write it in his book, I think it might be in this book. If it's not in this book, it's in one of his other books. But there is what Rupert calls it, the same thing I've called it, local awareness, where the body thinks that it is, and that's what we talked about. That's what
Psychism.
psychism is. It's the form thinking that it is aware of all experiences instead of awareness that is aware of all experience. So that would be a local awareness that thinks that that is the experience of awareness, which it is happening from awareness, but it's the finite that thinks that its objective reality is being aware instead of awareness that's aware of all experience.
It assumes its own consciousness is as limited as the body is. You know,
Yeah.
and all the limitations of the world, it limits its consciousness to that as well. But in the absolute knowing on page 57 in this chapter, it talks about the absolute knowing. It says, the knowledge I am is the only knowledge that remains the same under all circumstances, at all times, and for all people. And thus a hint in the finite mind as to its essential, irreducible reality. No other knowledge satisfies these requirements. And therefore, no knowledge other than awareness's knowing of its own infinite being can be said to be absolute.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is why we always say, I am. I am
Right.
sick. I am happy. I am Bill. I am Andrea. I am this. And what we don't realize is the power of that declaration. What we don't realize, as in the finite experience of the local of the person false self identity, we don't realize that we are calling on the power of the universe that will bring into manifestation the agreement in form that I am this or that. And that's why it's so powerfully important to have the experience of self-realization and release ourselves from the tyranny that we gave to ourselves when we believed that we were these finite people, these finite minds, these finite experiences. And one more thing, just sort of one final thing that I just want to mention before we close the show. We have about a minute. Is that there were some great comments this week on Facebook from Arthur Gay. Jenny Beal posted a great video from Rupert on this topic of self-inquiry and self-remembering. And so if you guys want to go to Facebook and see some of the comments that were made there. And then one final thing is that next week we're going to have Jenny Beal on the show. I'm looking forward to that. She is awesome, and she's got some, she has a lot of experience I call her the Rupert librarian, because she's always bringing forth all this great content. And again, I want to thank you, Annika, for being on the show with us today. And I look forward for you coming back.
That would be Andrea. And Annika's here too.
No, Annika. No, I'm talking to Annika.
You're reading the message board.
She's on the chat. She's in the message board. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us, Andrea. I look forward to you.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us.
Being with us again on the call-in feature, and thank you all for joining us. How would you like to close our time together, Andrea?
Well, I'll close with, in preparing for today to be with everybody in a nonverbal way, this is what I came up with.
Oh, nice. Did you do that?
Yes.
You drew all of that.
I colored all of that. It was black and white, and I brought my creativity to it. And Bill, I was looking at it, we wore the same colors today, and I drew this last week. Beautiful. I thought, okay, so what's my feeling, and what's in my nonverbal way? This is my joy.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Yes. We love you. We bless you. And we thank you.
And we are you. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye, Andrea.
Bye, Bill. Thank you.